welcome back to the Wizards Respite Sanctorum show where we dive into all things TTRPG. We have a fun show today. We got the news, we got debates, and we're gonna be fleshing out some ideas. As always, on the greatest hobby in the world, the TTRPG, the tabletop role-playing hobby. But as always, I am not alone. I'm here with Zach Zachariah from Old Man Gaming. Zach,
Hi,
how are you doing?
Hi, everybody. Excited to talk nerd stuff.
This is our favorite podcast because we get to just be geeks for a while. We get to talk about our favorite hobby, but basically talk about it in a way that we can't talk about it with normal people, which is just geek out forever about this stuff.
Yes.
We have to save it up for this opportunity. Before we jump into it, I got some news that is worth touching on in the RPG space. I've talked about this a little bit in the past. I'm probably going to talk about it a little bit in the future, as this seems to be a reoccurring news topic. Darrington Press is making the news again, this one with global distribution deals with Macmillan, which apparently is a pretty big distributor, worldwide distributor, and publishing company. I mean, I guess it's a printer. They will take this stuff, all kinds of content, and print it and distribute it across the globe. They are known for doing, like I said, everything from educational manuals to books to everything. So this is like a big powerhouse distribution and printer, which I think is pretty impressive coming from the Critical Role group, moving into publication and now mass distribution.
The Critical Role thing is very interesting to me because of the games and game companies that I would feel would be a challenge to D&D, which is the overlord of RPGs. I would never guess that a live streaming YouTube group would be the ones to bring a game company forward that might actually have it start to actually take people away from D&D. But from everything I've seen, D&D is losing more and more people to Daggerheart, and I think that's a very interesting take on it. I mean, like you have such other big time competitors out there, like White Wolf and big companies that are established, but the people who are actually challenging D&D are these YouTube guys.
Yeah, I do know. I agree. I think that's real interesting, and I think another thing that all those indie guys out there should look to is the pivot that Daggerheart did in terms of mechanic focus. The focus on that game is more narrative than crunch.
Right.
That's not necessarily saying one is better than the other, but they're getting their foot in the door with this niche and pivoting here. So they're not necessarily like trying to create D&D 2.0 or a copy of D&D. They're doing their own thing, and I think that's from a creative point of view pretty poignant.
And I don't want to stay on the topic too long, but one of the interesting things about this is this whole D&D RPG resurgence in the last 5-10 years has kind of come from the streaming place, the streaming platform, like people doing podcasts. Critical Role was a big part of that, but everybody wants to do one now. Like even people who don't get a lot. I mean, hell, we are in this group as well. Like we immediately were like, oh, this brings a new thing to TTRPG stuff when we can actually put it out there, and everything is so easy to put out there. But when you really look at the system of D&D, it is not made for that kind of thing. And I think that what's interesting here and what's interesting on this metric is, a lot of people wanting to do those shows, wanting to do that YouTube streaming stuff, wanting to do the podcast stuff, they might gravitate towards a game that's made specifically for that,
Absolutely, yeah. I 100% agree. I think that's some really, really... it's a really interesting time to be in this space, to be a creator in this space, and this is a really interesting sort of almost field test
Yeah.
of what a success is sort of looking at, what creators should look at as like not necessarily to emulate, but to understand what factors are occurring in this space on a
Yeah.
business standpoint and a creative standpoint.
Yeah.
Um, so definitely going to be, like I said, I think we're going to be seeing more of them in the news. I think we're going to be discussing it. We may even do a whole topic on their model and the differences and why maybe observations as to why they're being successful at this time.
Yeah.
Next article in the news, Ian's World, which is a real big RPG news and topic and blog in this space, has starting to release and talk about the top 10 anticipated games of 2025. I think this is kind of important for the same reason Daggerheart's important. It's showing a trend within the hobby itself and where people are moving and where people are putting their interest and their focus on what they want to be playing next. Legend in the Mist, 13th Age is on this, and it's a new edition that's coming out. That's an interesting one to me. I think mechanics-wise, I've been seeing that build over the last several years in popularity, and that's an interesting game to do a deep dive on at some point. I haven't played it yet, but from what I've heard and read about the mechanics, there's a certain degree of like a certain type of crunchiness to it that is sort of segmented from the role playing in a way that allows it to be, a nice mix of the two. I have to learn how to pronounce this one. I really should know it because we literally talked about it a lot on the last show. Cosmere, I believe is how it's pronounced. That's the one where it's a fantasy book series, actually multiple book series, that is now getting the TTRPG
Right.
treatment, and that bringing in potentially new fans to the hobby from the fantasy book series. That's another one that I think is going to be worth noting. I think there's going to be a potential. I mean, you could end up coming up with a bunch of different writers. Stephen King has a whole Dark Tower series that's a sort of multi-dimensional, space hopping kind of thing. That could be a RPG. Easily.
Oh, really easily.
So,
really easily. It would be hard to follow a little bit because I've read those books and there's a lot of like stuff he doesn't about the world that he doesn't describe enough. But that could definitely.
I didn't know you read those books.
What?
Those are some of my favorite.
yeah, I read them. They were my favorite until the end, and then I got very, 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 very mad that I had spent as much time as I had on the books.
This would be another topic for another. I think this is a whole hour's conversation we could have on the Dark Tower series.
Oh yeah, I was so obsessed with those books until the end, and then I was like, "What the?" I was not happy.
It's kind of the Stephen King curse. Like the ending is always the worst part.
I think an ending of 7 books that takes you 20 years too. The ending being the worst part is the to the degree it takes him to actually finish it, because good God, good God.
Yeah. I think that I 100% actually want to do that for a future episode. The other thing on this list that I thought was notable, there's several things that are on this list. Starfinder 2E. But another one that I wanted to pick on was Alien RPG, for the same reason that I wanted to talk about the Cosmere. It's another IP that is getting the RPG treatment. I remember when I was in high school, Alien vs. Predator was the video game of my high school. Everybody was playing it. Alien's getting an RPG. I wouldn't be surprised if they have an Alien vs. Predator RPG coming out at some point. They built a very robust universe there. Kind of interested in reading that book and seeing where it goes. I never really saw Alien as an RPG. You know, it's a pretty self-contained story, especially if you just stick with the narrative from all of the movies. But it's a very anticipated one.
I don't know. I don't know. This might be a topic for another time because I don't want to have our news eat up our entire show. But the IP use in RPGs makes me very nervous, to be quite frankly honest. I think it causes some problems in games and it in video games on my other side, and like I see some of that here too. Like you're doing it to get are you doing it to get a rise out of people and to get people to buy books, or are you doing it to actually make an RPG out of it? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and then you get into this weird space of like IPs are more important than the actual content itself. And that's a big problem in video games right now, because we have games that are hitting like their fifth and seventh iteration or sequel, and people get sick of the franchise, but the developers don't want to let them go because they're guaranteed paychecks, but they're not really guaranteed paychecks anymore, but they don't want to risk anything on anything new, and you get locked into like Halo number 37, and it's just
right.
more of the same shit that you don't care about, and like that kind of stuff makes me really nervous in the TTRPG space. Like, do we really need an Alien TTRPG? Hot take here. I know that obviously it's a hot take because it's most expected, but like I go to TTRPGs for completely new creative things, not necessarily for licensed products. And like Mothership, why don't we just get Mothership? That's kind of an Alien RPG,
Yeah.
it's a really severe horror game with kind of like H.G. Geiger feels. Like, why do we need an Alien RPG, or could we like let the more indie kind of new IP things shine here? The other thing is too, people who are coming to the industry, who are coming to RPGs for the first time, are going to look at the shelves and they're going to go, do I want to play Mothership, this thing I've never heard of before and know nothing about, or will I pick up Alien because it's a movie that I watched when I was a kid and I'm very into it? And like, don't get me wrong, would I be the first in line to buy a Big Trouble in Little China TTRPG? Yes, I would, because I'm also a cuck. But at the same time, like, you know what I mean? Like, this kind of takes some stuff away from that. Even in that kind of area, I could find an RPG that already does that, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I would like to see, and I haven't obviously haven't read the Alien RPG. This is most anticipated for 2025. I am gonna have to double check the date and when it actually drops. It might actually be out now, but I'd very much like to read it and then compare it to Mothership. I would have. My first instinct is, I mean, Mothership is a really good horror game, and it does what the first Alien did in the movie in an RPG.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to have seen an Alien RPG basically powered by Mothership.
Right. Okay,
it's already
and that's
set
a thing
up.
too. Like, why wouldn't we just do like an IP? Why wouldn't we do an IP module for these games? But instead of doing that, we're making our own thing to take away from those games. And I don't like that. I don't like the idea of somebody using an IP or leveraging an IP to take something away from a system that's already in place or there. Does the Alien, and I haven't read the Alien system, so I might get yelled at in the comments or whatever, but does the Alien system do something different from Mothership or the other Eldritch horror games out there? Because if it doesn't, then why? Why are we doing this? You know, like, hell, make an Alien Call of Cthulhu module. Call of Cthulhu is all about madness and insanity, which is kind of the very crux of the H.G. Geiger Alien stuff. So, like, why not just do that? There are tons of systems out there which would benefit from an IP boost. Instead, we are going to make our own IP and just eat everybody's lunch. And I don't like that mentality. And I don't know that that's the mentality. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not in deep enough for it, but like I see that in video games all the time, and I don't like that. And here I keep hearing about these, like, look at this new IP game coming out, and it's like, man, but like there's space games over here, or there's medieval games over here. We don't need these IPs in there. Just make that for that, you know.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely something there. I think these are worth another deep analysis in a show all two of
Yeah.
themselves, and I think that's definitely something that if you're listening out there, there's something to look forward to.
Yeah,
we'll be
yeah,
doing
sorry to be
some
the hot take
examination,
guy
I think.
today.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, so I guess it's a good episode for a good time for a debate episode.
yeah. So that is what we're doing today. Why don't we pivot there? I think that's a perfect
Okay. All
pivot
right.
point.
All right.
Um,
Perfect.
so this is something that Zach and I have talked about a little bit on various shows and um, episodes, which is basically theater of the mind versus maps, virtual tabletop maps or actual maps on the tabletop itself. Um, we've done these debates in the past, and more often than not, we have found that we are in line with a lot of stuff. But this is one where I think we're actually going to be debating it. And as always, a reminder to everybody out there: this is a friendly debate between friends. A good example: we live in a world where everybody is constantly angry with each other. This is a good example of how to be a grown-up and talk about a subject of which you are on an opposite side of, and there's no reason to be yelling or swearing
I
or
like that
angry.
Wiz knows me and himself enough to have already decided which sides we're on before even talking about it. Like he sent me the text of like, we're gonna do a debate episode about this, and I'm just sitting here like, you haven't even asked me what side I'm on, but I'm like, he knows where I am on this.
Yeah. We've had little bits of glimpses here, but I know. So yeah. So we talked a little bit about how we're going to jump into this one. We do a D20 roll. High roll drops their point first. We discuss the points, and then we move on to the next point. The next guy goes.
Okay.
Does that sound good, Zach?
I think that's fair. The only thing I'll add to that is whoever's going first should get one final chance to rebut the person going second, because the person rolling the high die isn't getting an advantage. They're speaking into a void, and then the other person gets to just respond to the original comments, whereas I think the person rolling high should be able to respond to the response, basically.
Fair. And we'll try to keep this moving as much as we can, but we do have a habit of
yeah, in all fairness, in a debate, the person who goes first is not an advantage.
Right, that's true. That's true. Actually, that's
I can just
true.
sit here and listen to what you're saying and be like, all right, here's how I'm gonna knock that down. Here's how I'm gonna shoot that down.
Yeah.
I'm gonna shoot that down. So I think the other person should at least get a small rebuttal to the rebuttal.
No, 100% agree. That's real smart. Let's do that. That's how we're mad.
So you guys get to see how the sauce is made.
That's right. All right. Are you ready to roll?
Yeah, roll it up, man.
All right. I got I think that's a 5. I did a little 3D printing, and this did not come out well. I'm gonna go with 5. That looks like a 5.
I did a 10, so
okay.
I guess I get to start. So I just get to pick a section and go.
Yeah. Your
right.
point.
Very obviously, I am in the theater of mind camp. I am not in the mad camp, and here is why. Okay, the whole idea of RPGs, the whole crux of RPGs, is to get into the character, to get into the world, to feel it, to sense it, to taste it, to hear it, to smell it. Okay, when you see little miniatures that don't move on a little map that doesn't move, it takes you right out of it. It takes you right out of it because the world is constantly moving. It is spinning on its axis. It is in constant forward motion. And a person in a fight is in a constant forward motion. The minute you break it down and you show people how stagnant actual RPG mechanics are, it makes it a math equation. And like, let's face it, okay? RPGs will never be able to fully simulate life. The goal is always to simulate life with a system. That's the goal. That's always the goal. However, it's never going to pull that off because life is too fast and too in the moment. you get to think in RPGs. That's why RPGs are cool. That's why they're a power fantasy, because you get to use that brain of yours before you make any action. In life, you don't get to don't get to use the brain when people are shooting at you or coming at you with a knife. You just react. Whereas with this, you actually get to use the brain. Oh, he's attacking me. Well, I have 2.5 minutes to think about what I'm going to do to him. You don't get that in real life. But when you point that out to a player, it's going to feel less like life. The only way to keep that illusion is to take that map away. Take the math equation away from them and have them sound out the word. I know I'm mixing my metaphors here, but at the end of the day, that's how you get somebody into the game. That's how you get them to feel it. And the reason the theater of the mind is so powerful is because they get to see it. And even if what they're seeing is not exactly what you're throwing down, they're seeing it. They don't see it if it's just a paper map and some miniatures on the table.
Okay. The first shots have been fired. Okay, so
it's hard to go.
I see what you're saying.
So much better at rebutting.
I know it is actually easier to rebut. That was a real fair point. When we're to start this off, yeah, we definitely need to be able to balance that out. So my rebuttal to that is I see what you're saying as far as like the visual of the map drawing the player out of the context of the scene, of the combat scenario. Or whatever this, I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be a combat scenario, but it draws them out of the scene. Now, my rebuttal would be that, though I can see why that would be true for some players, but for other players, I would also argue that the map allows them to offset some of the mental load of certain mechanics, such as distance and environment and the like. So that they are able to be more immersed in the scene because they're not having to keep track of how far away that character is, or is there a chair in this room, or is there a table or an obstacle here, or where's my buddy at? And because they can just look at it at a glance and just see all of those factors, and then from there think about what they're going to do in the moment, what the scene sounds like, and the like. That would be my rebuttal to the map being too much of a draw out of the immersion aspect.
Okay, so I get a small rebuttal to that, correct?
Yes.
All right. On the small rebuttal to that, first of all, I don't think you should be playing a system that requires you to worry about where fucking tables are in a room. And I think that's part of the problem, is that the map makes you think about that stuff. Get that out of there, because that's not cool. That's not going to give you a power fantasy. You don't need that. So like that kind of stuff should just get rid of it in the first place, because once you get rid of that and you let the power of the theater of the mind roll over you, you're going to realize how inconsequential where the chairs were in the bar are, unless somebody's using the chair to hit somebody, and then let the chair be close enough, because that's cool as hell. The whole idea of an RPG is to give people that power fantasy and let them be in the moment and just have those cool moments. So just let them have whatever they need. Like, I'm not saying like give them the world, make it challenging, but like if they want the table there, the table's there. If they don't want the table there, the table's not there. I think that kind of like obstacle stuff is the kind of thing that drags down RPGs during a combat or during a scene.
Okay.
So do we do a roll now? Okay. Do we do another roll now?
Yeah,
or going back and forth. I don't know how to do this.
I figured like, okay, so that was our first topic.
Okay.
You dropped that one. I figured I'd drop the next one, and then I would say my spiel.
I got you.
And then you rebuttal, and then I get my last word.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Go for it.
And we go back and forth that way.
But what you drop can't be a rebuttal to my rebuttal, right?
Right.
Okay. All right, cool.
So it's a new topic, basically, trying to move it to the next thing.
This debate. I got it.
Yeah.
Everybody else is like, why these guys figure this shit out before they...
I know. This this is how the debate. I mean, this is kind of the issue with the debates with us. Half of the debates that we've ended up having, we're halfway in agreement, anyways.
Yes.
I think
Well,
this is the first debate where we're actually like on opposite sides of it.
I want to put a caveat. When we're all done with the full debate, I think we should both say what we like about the other person's side.
That's good. That's good.
Because there's a couple of things that I'm fine with maps about. Yeah.
We're both married men, and that's actually, I don't know if this is true for you, but that actually is how my debates go with my wife.
Yeah, it depends.
It that way.
I've had some ones where it turns into "fuck you," "oh yeah, fuck you." It's like, hey, really sorry I said "fuck you" yesterday. Sorry about that.
Okay, so my first point was actually very similar to the point that I just made in rebuttal to yours. So I'm just going to move on to my second point because I feel like we've already covered a bit, a good chunk of that ground. So, complete sidestep from the debate of mechanics and being sucked into the mind versus being drawn out of the moment. This being good for individuals, and I know you're going to have a lot to say about this too, but this is being good for individuals with ADHD or are very distractible at the table. I'm one of those people. I have a player that's one of those people. We've talked about it amongst each other. He likes the the maps because, and I like the maps. It gives us an extra level of something to think about. ADHD people have a tendency to bounce around. We're both ADHD, and
yes.
Our brains have a tendency to bounce around between topics. Giving us more topics to bounce around within the context of the game is helpful. So having a map that you can look at and think about strategically, and then bounce back over to what you're going to say and do, and then bounce back over to what your abilities are, and then bounce back to the math is the point that I'm trying to make here for ADHD folk. That may not be the case for everybody with ADHD, but in my situation, the situation of the player that we've discussed back and forth, it's one of the things that kind of helps us with the keeping ourselves invested in the moment of the game.
So this is interesting, and I know you only brought this topic up because you know I am ADHD as well. If I was not, it would be a completely unfair topic for me to rebut in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, I like right now I'm fiddling with the dice. I usually have a little fidget that I fiddle with whenever I am doing a podcast and whenever I am playing a game. Not necessarily game mastering, but playing a game, because of the fact that for me, it's very hard to focus on the specific thing that I have to focus on. That being said, this is a tough one because I feel like ADHD, just like everything else mental, and just for everybody out there, I do not talk about my ADHD often. It's not something I like to go into, just because there is a level of people who think that when I say ADHD, they either think, oh, he's using that as an excuse, or they then feel like, oh, everything he does is because of ADHD. You know what I mean? I don't like to be defined by
right,
it.
yeah.
So like, which I will say, I don't think I'd be the person I am without it, but like it is a tricky subject. So I like to stay away from it. Topics like, in all my podcasts for the most part, I've mentioned it a handful of times. That being said, it's a spectrum just like anything else mentally. So like ADHD works very different for Wiz than it does for me, for Wiz's friend. And like maps like trigger my ADHD because with a map, so like I like to be thinking about 10s, 20s types of different things all at once, like different actions happening, different combat happening. My brain is jumping around to the battlefield, over here, constantly. And this is more like when I'm game mastering. When I'm playing, I have a hard time anyway, but when I'm game mastering, I'm jumping around, constantly kind of evaluating the battlefield, what the battlefield would look like. When you put a map in front of me, it's all kind of defined. And I I lose focus on it. I'm already thinking about something else. I'm having a hard time focusing on where what cool thing is going to happen, and when I lose focus on it and I stop thinking about it, then I'm planning my day tomorrow and I don't even realize it. I'm somewhere else. So like, it's weird because your ADHD is managed by the maps. Mine is hindered by them. Mine is managed by the theater of the mind and all the characters. If anybody who's watched our channel or the TTRPGs I've done through Wizard's Respite as a game master, you will notice that I am constantly separating players. Constantly. Like, I hate to point out like my tricks, but it is one of my tricks. I'm constantly separating players. I am the best when none of the players are together and they're all solo. And the reason for that is because while I'm doing one thing with another player, I am thinking about the other three players, and none of them are having the same experience. So when my brain tires of the situation I'm in, I jump to the next one, and I never lose the thread of any of them because of that. That chaos is where my brain thrives, I guess. With a map, that chaos is gone. So, like, it actually hurts it a little bit. Would be the only rebuttal I have, which is a tricky one because, like I said, I don't think I can necessarily rebut that your ADHD, that it helps your ADHD and many other people's out there. I don't think I can rebut that. That would be unfair because my experience with it is not yours. All I can say is that while it helps some, it hurts others just as much, I would say.
That's a really good point. I didn't really think about it in terms of you did just phrased it. Like, it is a hard one to rebut, and I do appreciate that, and I see that, and that's a really good point. Like, it is a spectrum, and some people like I love to read. I get absorbed by books. Some people with ADHD, it's the freaking opposite. And it's just, the way I think there's different types of ADHD as well. The different factors that create that condition. So it is a little bit more of a complex note, I think. Where, like, if you're somebody with ADHD, maybe give maps a try. Just keep in mind, it may end very badly for you, or it may be a great tool.
Right. It's weird. I would say that if your ADHD thrives in chaos or multitasking, then I feel like the maps are going to hinder you a little bit. But if you need those things to focus, like if you need those like structural things to like kind of focus, it would help you a little bit. So it's a real tricky. It's a tricky situation.
Time to like experiment, basically.
Yeah. That one didn't really turn into a debate. It just turned into us.
It was just a breakdown, deconstruct.
Yeah, you never know where these podcasts are going to go.
Speaking of which, your turn.
It's my turn. How many are we going to do back and forth, by the way? You want to do 4 total, so we each get 2, and then we'll finish by saying what we like about the other one? So I would get one more, and then you would get one more?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. All right. I didn't know how much you had written
down. Because I have only one more.
I'm shooting from the hip. I didn't write shit down. So remember? I thrive in chaos.
3. I had 3, but the first one kind of became moot point because that was half of my rebuttal on your first one. So I think 4's perfect. 4's perfect.
Okay. My next one is maps are a crutch. Oh, can I mold 2 into each other?
Yeah.
Is that allowed?
Yeah.
Okay. I think maps are a crutch and they take up too much space. So like I guess this point would be practicality. Here's what it comes down to. If you are in a small place and you want to play some RPGs with a friend and you have to unfold a 4-foot map and get out your miniatures and then find place for dices and character sheets and everything, it gets real hectic. I play in a garage with 6 other guys. we have one long table and then a desk at the end to kind of make a T section. There is not a lot of space on that table. We are constantly bumping into each other. Our character sheets are overflowing into each other. Our drinks are overflowing into each other. Where the fuck we would put a map, I have no idea. So, like, just like from an area of play sort of situation, they're not really accessible. I will say there are plenty of online tools if you're playing online to kind of aid with that. But at the same time, if you don't have a powerful computer, you have to find a way to window it. You also have to find a way to put it into your stream if you're doing a podcast or something, because if you're using a map, the viewers have to be able to see it because the players are not describing, which brings me to the crutch part. The crutch part is it takes away your need to be creative. If you are a player and you are describing an action, or you're taking an action, so to speak, if you have a character on a map, you do not need to, you immediately don't need to define what that is. You can say, I move here, move your little piece, and then you can say, I attack with your little piece. If you do not have a map, that is when the creativity comes out. That's when you are rushing over the barrel and taking a high-end swipe with your sword in an attempt to break his guard and catch him off guard. That's when the descriptions come out. The minute you put that map in front of him and those character pieces in front of him, it takes away that because it's a crutch. It's something you can lean on to do your role-playing for you. And that, the minute you hit that, you have a problem. You have a disconnect. You have a disconnect between your character. You have a disconnect between the story. It slows things down. It overall irritates anybody who can't see it or watch it. So it'll hurt your podcast. And again, you don't have space for it. So that is the practicality argument.
Okay. So I can see, especially for physical maps, eating up a lot of space in a tighter area. One of my games I played at was in a buddy's apartment, and there was no room in there. It was a studio apartment, so he had a coffee table. That's what we played around. I will also say, though, that there are ways to getting around that, and I know you kind of touched a little bit upon it, but on my table at my home, I still use a map. I don't use a physical map. I use a VTT on a television. And I just project it straight up on the TV. There are issues that come along with that. My players will tell me where they want their characters to go, and I will move their pieces on the map if there's a combat scenario in that situation. So that will help with the physical space limitation. There's still some practical limitations there, of course, because maybe not everybody has a great setup for a TV like that, or maybe some people have a hard time seeing a TV and a VTT on the TV. So there are physical limitations there. I will concede that to a certain degree, and there may be situations where maps are not as effective or useful. Because of those actual, like, just fundamental nuts and bolts of actually having a physical map, or even a VTT. But I would say, in debate for your second point that you kind of rolled into this one, the physical objects, like, on the map you're right, can be used to sort of draw people out of it. I move my piece here, I attack. But I would say that is more a matter of using the map not optimally, okay, in an ineffective way, as opposed to, because that could be said about theater of the mind too, or just rolling any combat scenario. A character could just say, well, I go up and attack that guy, roll the dice, I'm done. Or the player could be like, I go up and I slash at him with my sword, and then the DM expands upon that. You cut his head off and blood splouts everywhere. But in a map, you could do that still while having these obstacles in the room that give the player something to think about and then move to. So you have a warehouse. The player says, okay, I'm going to stand on that stack of boxes and I'm going to shoot down my arrows over here. Maybe the player wouldn't necessarily have thought of that if they didn't have the physical, like, vision of a stack of boxes in a warehouse to be playing with, and like, oh wait, that stack of boxes right next to that bad guy. I can sneak up and jump down on him or something like that. So, given that visual cue, they may be able to think about these visuals a little bit more. And if you train your players to describe their actions and interacting with the map themselves, then they can say, I sneak up and I grab those boxes, and the GM can then throw, and I climb up those crates, and the GM can throw in, there's a spider there. What happens? Do you spook and scare, or do you stay steady, roll for, your nerve to stay blah, 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 blah. And that's how you can use a map to interact with your players a bit.
I guess I gotta say those were strong rebuttals in a lot of way. I don't think I can really rebut to the practicality. I will say on the creativity thing, the only thing I'll say is, while you're using a map wrong if you're not describing things, at the same time, if you're not using a map, there's not a chance to use it wrong. So like it forces players into that mode of creativity, whereas when you have a map and you have a player that could slip into using it wrong, or a game master for that matter, then the opportunity is there. If you take the opportunity away, they don't get the chance to not be creative. They have to be creative, period. Or, sink or swim sort of thing. That would be my own.
Remember that point when we go back and we talk about each other's point, what we like about each other's points. That's the one I'm going to talk about. That's actually a really good point. Help me remember that point, because that's a good one. Okay.
So your final one, final time to go first.
Okay. So my final one is virtual tabletop maps and map builders. I like making maps. This is just something that I enjoy doing. Even if I didn't play tabletop role-playing games, I'd probably still do it. It's just a fun thing that gets me out of my head, and I enjoy. I have a map building program that I subscribe to. Dungeon Fog, I've subscribed to a bunch. At some point, I might even do a whole article about the various different types and their strengths and weaknesses. I find it a very nice creative outlet, and I also find creating maps as a GM a useful way for getting out of creative roadblocks. And I've heard other GMs use this as well. If I'm stuck in a room and I don't know what the heck my players are supposed to do in there, I will make a map of the room as I'm writing out my notes. And just the process of doing that helps me get inspired for an obstacle, a puzzle, a combat encounter. And I'll change the map physically as I'm inspired, and then I'll go back to my notes and or my written content and introduce the elements that I have been inspired to create through the map making process. And even writing like long story form for the campaign, sometimes just doing a nation's like map or a territory map will help me just sort of get the balls rolling in my head, the inspiration flowing. Like, okay, this is this nation and the bad guy lives there, so now I need to have another obstacle between where they're at and the bad guy's at. So there's a way station there, and now I have to design a way station point for them to go and infiltrate, blah, 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 blah. And it helps me get the creative juices flowing.
You know what's interesting, before I go into my rebuttal, something you just said in that I'm going to use on my things I like about yours, but on the same level, both of your points are very hard for me to rebut. Not hard in the sense of like mean, but like I almost think it's unfair to you because you have picked things that are very personal specific, whereas I picked like I got the debate in. You're like this, and I'm like I can't really tell you what you do or do not like. That
True, that's fair.
I'm gonna try. Okay, so first of all, I hate making maps. What are you talking about? You like making maps? Are you out of your freaking mind, man? Maps are the worst. And I'm gonna list why making maps are the worst. First of all, they take fucking ever. I got shit to do, like mowing the lawn and stuff, man. A truly, like, if I were to actually sit there and map out a freaking castle, holy crap, I ain't got time for that. Number two, players are going to see 2% of that map. There is going to be a line from start to finish, and all of the shit that you planned in the 98% rest of that is just lost to time. Oh my god, that's the worst. I have done maps, and I've had players go through it, and I'm like, there was so much stuff over here. So much stuff. So I started to do maps where, like, the players had to see everything, and then I'm like, why am I even making a map? I do procedurally generated stuff now. That is how I do it. I make a chart for, if you're going to do a dungeon, I make a chart for what the room's going to look like, what's going to be in it. 4 Against the Darkness does the same thing. Like, it's its own game, but you can use their dungeon making tools as kind of like a almost a module for anything. And like, I just procedurally generate the dungeons now because like I said, don't have that much time to sit there and do architecture that no one other than me is going to be able to see or appreciate. And I don't like that nobody gets to see it all. Like, it drives me fucking nuts when they don't find, the trader over here with the side quest. Whereas if I am just procedurally generating it and improvising it, they get to see everything I come up with because I'm coming up with it on the spot. And that is so much more satisfying for me because then it feels like it was all supposed to happen. So that's my rebuttal. You're a lunatic.
I will say, okay, this is a really good point, and actually, how you started off was actually a really, really fair point. This was a little bit, I didn't even think about it when I came up with the virtual tabletop as a inspiration thing, that isn't really, that's a personal, like, value and not really a debatable
I can't virtue. Rebut the inspirational thing, and part of that is going to be in my things I like. So just for the record, the inspirational thing is not what I'm attacking. It is the fact that the actual process and then follow through of the map is an infuriating, insanity-inducing procedure that I do not want any part of.
I gotcha. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying there. I mean, like, this is, I think, just a matter of taste at the point. Like, like the Greeks had an ancient, the saying, there's no accounting for taste. Right. It's just individuals have taste. And
that's why I was like, I feel bad because your only rebuttal to my rebuttal is no, it's not.
Okay, so there's one thing I will say, and this is not really a rebuttal. Like, this is my attempt at a rebuttal. Where you had mentioned about the virtual, the rollable table and rollable generation of a dungeon. Really fun way to run a dungeon. And I actually, and you're going to call me a psycho for doing this, but I actually started doing that with maps. And what I did was make a D20 table of a bunch of different types of rooms, a combat encounter room, a challenge room, and for each of those types of rooms, I came up with several maps of just the room. And as my characters wander through the dungeon, they roll a dice, a d20, which determines what the next room is that they're going to encounter, and then I drop the map in of that particular room. And so it doesn't offer me the same flexibility that a sheer generation does, as, I already have like 6 combat encounter rooms generated. And so if they roll on a combat counter room, I can just pick one of those 6 instead of coming up with a fresh, brand new, uniquely generated combat encounter room. But there is also that, complete randomness of a dungeon crawl.
If I were to rebut my rebuttal, I would say the one thing about procedurally generated dungeons in the moment is that it does stop things. It's like, okay, we're about to go in another room. All right, give me a roll, 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 give me a roll. Okay, here's what you see. And it does break that forward momentum. So there is something to be said to that. So So who should go first on the what we like about the other persons, since we have concluded our debate section of this podcast and we are getting dangerously close to running too long?
Right. Who went first on the? Okay, who just
I
went?
did.
Went.
I,
You
I
just
went
went.
I
So
went first. So it went me, you, me, you.
okay, okay. So then I'll go next then, and then you can
Okay.
finish up.
Sound good.
Um. So let's see. What was that? I knew I was going to forget it if I didn't write it down. I didn't write it down. The topic that we just we went forward before this, the one where we're talking about. I had mentioned that
Oh,
was a good point.
the when I rebutted your rebuttal about, if you don't have maps, you don't give them the option to not be creative.
Right. That is actually an extremely good point, and that is actually something that I didn't even really realize it until you had said it. But that is a struggle I have faced being a map guy and running maps. I try to push my players to be very descriptive because I feel like it does help them be more immersive, and I see a little light in their eyes when they do that. It is easy for them to slip out of that, and they're just like, I move there and I attack that guy, and they get excited about that moment, but they're losing that immersion, and I don't see that same light in the moment. And even myself as a GM have to stop sometimes. I will fall into that same trap of, okay, he moves here and he attacks you, he moves here and he attacks you, he moves here and he attacks you, because I'm just trying to get through the monster turns very quickly, and I lose, which is, I'm the worst person to lose as a GM, the descriptive flow. And I maps do give me that escape, that pitfall almost of losing that immersion. That was a really good point, and it is something to watch yourself on if you're a map guy and you want to keep, or if you want to use maps and you want to keep the immersion happening. You really do have to remember to ask for descriptions of what they're doing, and remember to be descriptive yourself. So I like one of the reasons why I liked that point so much. Not only is because it put into context a problem I often see in myself when I'm running maps. So that was a really good point.
I mean, in fairness to that, I see the same point. Sometimes I get a lot of questions when I'm the game master of what's around me, what's going on, or like I'm gonna do this, and then I have to explain, no, you're too far away. Maps fix those problems really quickly and really easily. So that is a rebuttal against me that I would have used if I were you. That being said, especially you guys even playing in the game, I can't count the number of times it's happened in like things like Astral Drive and stuff. Even in we just recorded it, so I don't know if it will be out by the time this comes out, but like even the game we recorded one of the best fight scenes we've ever done, 0G gunfight. And there was multiple times where it's like, who's where, what's going on, how far are they from this, whereas if you have a map, you don't have to ask those questions. That is not the things that I want to point out. I just I hate not rebutting myself. So I'm the kind of self-destructive that has to go right after.
We might be the worst debaters in the world. We just keep saying, like, I see your point.
I would be good if I could walk away, but I can't walk away. I'm self-destructive. Like, the minute I say something in my head, I'm like, this is why you're wrong. The things that I will point out, and this was not necessarily one of your points, but I'm going to roll it into the ADHD point a little bit. Kids, accessibility. So like ADHD is not the only reason that accessibility would be required for somebody. And maps allow an accessibility of people who might not have the imagination that I have. They might not have the creativity that we have. That's not wrong. It's not a dig at them. Some people's brains don't work that way. Like, my wife is a wonderful person. She has started actually playing role-playing games, which she has no real interest in, just to, play with me and her daughter. That being said, she's not the most creative person. That's not where her hobbies are. That's not what she does. so maps help with that, help with like defining. She likes the definition of exactly where the person is and exactly where the other person is. Same with my kid who is 9. My kid does not understand, like, when I say to her, you're 10 feet away from the person. She has no idea what that is. She's 9. She barely understands what a foot is. So, like, in measurement, I mean. So, like,
Right, yeah.
defining those kind of things becomes incredibly hard for a child. Maps give that accessibility that weren't there before. So, like, as much as I love the theater of the mind, there are certain people that maps are just better for, that they need it. They need it to play. And I'd rather them play than not. And the final thing that I will say for maps, and this was the point that you made that I really want to glob onto, that is my biggest point, is that we were focusing very heavily on dungeon maps and maps for combat. But there are a lot of maps in games that are basically required. I've talked about it repeatedly on this channel. I am working on this massive pirate game, or like ancient sailing game sort of thing, like fantasy sailing. And guys, sailing does not work without locational maps, because, and I'm not even just talking about like going to islands and specifics. The only reason people sailed was to take things from point A to point B. That's why they did it. So if there isn't a reason to take point A to point B, and I'm going to tell you, doing the maps, I'm like, okay, so I have, like right now, I have this highly contested island section that is the main crux of the campaign that I'm in. And it has like 5 different cultures all vying for it. Why? Well, that means that island section has to somehow be in between all 5 of those cultures, because that's why they would sail through it, because no one would want just an island. So like
Right.
there's stuff like that, like you need to and then I made a bunch of other cultures in the game that aren't in those island sections. Why aren't they? Well, they've got to be up to the north, and they've got to be able to do their stuff the other way. When you really break down like world building on a whole, like not just like maps, and this was something you specifically said, the waypoint in between, the bandit way station in between the city and the dungeon and stuff, you need that, and it needs to make sense. Why do these people fight with this? Oh, well, because they're always in the cold, so they always have picks, so that's why they fight with pickaxes, or something like that. Like everything has to kind of make sense in the world. When you really look at our planet and the cultures that have come from it, they get built basically on environmental situations. You know what I mean? Like that's how they create their rituals, that's how they create their behaviors, that's how they create who they are as a culture in the world. So if you're doing that in a role-playing game, you have to have a map. There's no way to do a map. You can't just say this is a highly contested island nation with everybody there, but it's all these small beach islands. Well, there's no resources on those, so why does everybody want them so bad? Oh, they have to be the trade station between all the continents. You know what I mean? All the continents have to kind of surround them, and then you're already building a map. So like maps are integral when you really think about like world building. And like that was something you kind of touched on in the narrative thing, because narratively you require maps. You have to know where everything is located narratively, especially if you're doing something epic. If you're doing something very small, like here's your village, here's the dungeon, that's all we're dealing with, you don't really need it. But if you're doing something epic, you have to kind of start to understand narratively, like that it builds a narrative on itself.
Okay. Yeah. I think we did it.
Yeah, we did it.
I think we got our the great debates. This is one that we have talked about a little bit here and there from time to time, and
we've never done a show on this. Like when you suggested this the other day, I was like, we had to have done a show, but we haven't. So I was like, oh, okay, let's just do a show about it. Like I can't believe we haven't touched on that.
Yeah, and this is a good one. And again, this is another one of our debates that was very amicable. People online don't have to be so very angry.
Be nice to each other, everybody, man. Don't get toxic. People can have a difference of opinion of you, and It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's
And
fine.
um, uh, I've been playing at multiple Zach's games with no maps. Freaking love them. Love every one of them. You don't have to like. There's no right or wrong answer in so many things. It's just what you end up enjoying, and that's just the way it is. Um, I think we both have described enough of our points where people out there, GMs out there, that have never used a map, maybe they're excited to use them because of my points. Maybe other GMs are like, holy crap, that guy's crazy. I'm definitely going Zach's way. I'm never using a map. It just
I'm
depends
not gonna
on
lie.
yourself.
It was interesting when you suggested it as a debate because, like, I was like, I actually have been a little bit more towards maps lately. Not that I would ever use them in one of my games, just because, but just because of what we've been doing with my kid and my wife and stuff like
Oh,
that. And
right.
like maps, we tried to do a session yesterday without maps, and it was a little bit difficult. Like, I mean, I think that like there are people out there that need those maps. Just need the maps, you know. There's
Yeah,
nothing wrong
yeah,
with
it just
that.
depends.
Yeah, you just got to find that happy medium, you know.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, Zach, I think we've run through the time. I think we've run through the debate, and I think we've got a lot done on this topic. Before we get out of here today, do you got something you'd like to plug?
Yeah. We've got a special mid-season coming out of Ordo. Maybe the first episode's already out, not sure yet, before this came out, but it's called Ordo Scriptorium Eulogy. It's going to cover the space between Season 2, which just finished up, and Season 3. Not to spoil anything, but I'm taking over as Game Master, and Wizard is playing, which is another reason for it. So we're setting up a lot of storylines there, and I'm not going to lie, it was one of the best little things I've ever run. So I hope everybody checks that out. We also have a lot of TTRPG stuff coming. We've already filmed 2 episodes of Astral Drive. We're going to film at least 6, I'd say, before taking another break. So those will be coming you guys' way. And then I'm trying to set up one more little TTRPG thing just to give everybody a taste of the pirate game that I am working on with Wiz here, because he works hard enough, and then maybe somebody else. We don't know yet.
Yeah, lots of that last game was a lot of fun. Definitely looking forward to that drop in myself, and definitely looking forward to that pirate game as well. That's you've been talking about it. Sounds like a lot of fun. And be honest with you, I love pirates. I love sailing ships. I just finished a novel about pirates. Because I love them so much. This is gonna be fun. This is gonna be fun.
I love them. I'm right there with you. It's like my favorite subject, and like the fact that I'm finally getting to play, and that's it. Because never does anybody want to do them, and like for some reason they've become really hot right now. So there's some video games about them that I can actually play, and like now I'm actually role playing this, and people are really into it. I'm like, yes, this is I wanted this my entire life, you know.
Time for pirate mania.
Yeah, I'm the guy who makes the pirate in the D&D game, and they're like, "There's not even an ocean around." I'm like, "I don't know. I want to be a pirate." Like, it's like I'm
a land
excited.
pirate.
Land pirate. Right. So I'm very excited about this game. I put a lot of work into it. It probably won't be out for at least 2 years because of the amount that I want to put into it before we're done. But the fighting in it is something I am extremely proud of. So yeah, I'm hoping to show the world a little bit of it sometime soon with Wiz's help. So yeah.
Cool. And the last thing I'd like to talk about is wizardsrespite.com. As always, all of these episodes can be seen there, as well as everything we do, TTRPG. Ordo Scriptorum, the mid-season is going to drop there. You can also find the Ordo Scriptorum book there, as well as on itch.io. And please check it out. Please check out the other episodes we've done of the actual gameplay. You can see it actually played, and then take that game and bring it to your own table and your own friends. Also, t-shirts. Got my D20. Bring it. And we got the Dungeon Master since the days of yore, and a lot of others. I just dropped another one. It was a tank top for the summer. You can pick up on there. And I think that's everything for today's show. So everybody out there, hope you have gotten something out of this. Either use maps, don't use maps, but just whatever you do, keep rolling them dice.